that unfortunately can be stigmatizing depending on the setting that you're in. And so for me, I really try to do my part to normalize these discussions. And so I'll just start off with a brief description of each of these principles. So, principle number one is intersectionality. Audre Lorde said, "We do not live single issue lives." So, when we think about intersectionality, we understand that ableism coupled with white supremacy, supported by capitalism, underscored by heteropatriarchy, has rendered the vast majority of the world invalid. And so when we talk about disability justice, we recognize that we are all likely to become disabled or more disabled as we age. And so disability really is a priority, or it should be a priority with that in mind, given the fact that we are all likely to benefit from greater access. The second principle is leadership of those most impacted. And so Aurora Levins Morales said, "We are led by those who most know these systems." So when we think about mainstream operations, we are not often led by those who are the most impacted, but disability justice really understands that if the least oppressed folks are leading the movement, then they're probably not thinking critically enough to meet the needs of the most oppressed folks, which is why we really want to highlight the importance of this movement being led by the folks who are the most impacted. The third principle is anti-capitalist politic. And so it says, in an economy that sees land and humans as components of profit, we are anti-capitalist by the nature of having non-conforming body minds. And so disability justice really understands that for a lot of us, we may not feel as if we can separate our bodies from our minds. Whereas I feel like in a lot of mainstream settings, you are expected to compartmentalize, like your body is separate from your mind. And yet, with a background as a therapist, I know that more often than not, what is happening with your body may impact what is happening with your mind. And similarly, if you're struggling mentally, you may see the impacts of that in terms of your physical health. The fourth principle is commitment to cross movement organizing. It says shifting how social justice movements understand disability and contextualize ableism. Disability justice lends itself to politics of alliance. So when we talk about disability justice, we are also talking about racial justice. So that is another movement that is aligned with disability justice. Another movement that I can give as an example would be abolition. We understand that disabled folks are at greater risk of being policed and imprisoned. And that is why we understand that part of a commitment to disability justice is a commitment to cross-movement organizing. The next principle is recognizing wholeness. So this says people have inherent worth outside of commodity relations and capitalist notions of productivity. Each person is full of history and life experience. So again, it kind of fits with that earlier principle that talked about understanding people as having body minds where you can't separate, this aspect of who you are from this other aspect of who you are. And that is something that tends to be what capitalism expects of us when we face ableism in terms of what productivity should look like, or this one size fits all approach. So that is where disability justice really encourages us to recognize our wholeness and the wholeness of other human beings. The sixth principle is sustainability. So it says we pace ourselves individually and collectively to be sustained long term. Our embodied experiences guide us toward ongoing justice and liberation. And so sustainability is something that I think about a lot as a disabled person who is not always as productive as I used to be in the past. I think of the first time that I was pushed out of a job due to white supremacist workplace harassment. I read over 450 books that year because I could still concentrate really well to be able to read that much. Whereas in my subsequent experiences, it's not realistic for me to expect that I can read as much because I find it harder to concentrate as I've aged. And so when I think about sustainability, I think about the fact that it means pacing myself. It means opening up space so that others can pace themselves and really engage in a way that makes sense for their needs. The next principle is commitment to cross disability solidarity. And so this one says, we honor the insights and participation of all of our community members, knowing that isolation undermines collective liberation. And so there are going to be people who are disabled in ways that I'm not. There are going to be people who have a completely different experience in terms of their functioning and what they need to be able to engage in learning or work or something else. I know for myself, over the last few years, I've gotten connected with quite a few deaf folks. And so in my friendships with them, I've realized how inaccessible most things are because we don't often have ASL interpretation services as part of what is offered for a lot of events. And so for cross disability solidarity, we really want to understand that there may be access needs that are different from ours, but we want to try to work in solidarity with those groups. The eighth principle is interdependence. It says we meet each other's needs as we build toward liberation, knowing that state solutions inevitably extend into further control over lives. And I think this current political juncture that we're at is probably a really vivid reminder of the ways in which state control can be detrimental to a lot of communities, including disabled folks. We know that there are lots of times where certain groups will be stigmatized or pathologized because of what a politician says or what, some authority has to say on the matter. When I think about this, I think a lot about how interdependence is something that applies to all of us, whether we're disabled or not. but often it is only disabled folks who are seen as deficient or dependent on others when we have needs. And the vast majority of folks are not self-sufficient. Like, I don't know anyone who is like growing all of the food that they're eating, cooking all of the food that they're eating, only making things or using things that they have made themselves. So generally, we tend to be interdependent. But I think when we talk about the experience of disability, that is where there tends to be that negative judgment when we are interdependent. So the ninth principle is collective access. It says, as brown, black, and queer-bodied disabled people, we bring flexibility and creative nuance that go beyond able-bodied or minded normativity to be in community with each other. And so this really understands that we need to think beyond the individual for the sake of the collective and figure out what access looks like for the collective. Just in terms of this workshop, the fact that this will be accessible for folks outside of the live presentation is a way that your organization is thinking about collective access. And the 10th principle, which is again interconnected with all the others, is collective liberation. So this says, no body or mind can be left behind. Only moving together can we accomplish the revolution we require. And so when we think about liberation, the understanding is that none of us are free unless all of us are free. And so what you might need for liberation might be different from what somebody else thinks is their top priority. But generally, if we're able to work together as a collective, we are better able to get all of our needs met. So all of these principles together make up the disability justice framework. And the hope is that the more you understand how all of these principles align, then you're able to integrate this understanding into how you engage with one another. So those are the 10 principles. Um, Here are a couple quotes from the Disability Justice Primer book. The first is from Lateef McLeod. It says, disability justice is fundamental in disrupting how we define a productive member of society. DJ also clearly challenges gender roles in terms of what it means to be a traditional male. And so again, especially at this current political juncture, we know that there can be certain norms of what certain groups are able to get away with doing, while other groups may be policed in terms of their behaviors. And so disability justice understands that gender can be a constraint if that does not align with one's individual experience. And so disability justice is really about meeting folks where they're at, in their understanding of gender, in their understanding of productivity, in really challenging norms with the perspective that how one person relates to something may vary from somebody else, because we may have certain abilities and challenges based on our disabilities. And if, to bring it back to my own experience, someone with a dynamic disability. So I think I was first diagnosed with migraine disorder in my early teens. But what that means is that if I am not dealing with a migraine, my ability to function may be very different from a day when I am dealing with a migraine, or if it's day 3 of a migraine and I haven't slept and I am struggling to concentrate. And so for some of us, our disability looks different from one day to the next. And so disability justice really understands that we need to take those things into consideration in terms of what we expect of a productive member of society. Because I can tell you, I look at some of these people who are making tons of money, and I don't necessarily think they are contributing to society in ways that are helpful. And yet, under capitalism, they may be rewarded because they align with whatever norms in society. And so the next quote from the book says, instead of building a shared identity, disability justice builds identities out of a shared politic, working to build what our people are practicing, a shared and central power analysis that seeks, creates, demands a different kind of relationship to power and resources, so that resources actually get directed to those who have less. And so that is from Leslie Fry. And again, it really understands that we may all have different access needs, even if we were both diagnosed with the exact same condition, right? The way that you may be able to manage migraine disorder, if you have access to all of the possibilities to medication or some new device or, certain supplements that might help to reduce the odds of migraines. I know for myself, my closest friend from grad school, she also has a terrible time with migraine disorder from her teens as well. But she was able to invest in this device that she attaches to her forehead, and that can really alleviate the migraine that she may be dealing with. But it's not something that every person who navigates migraines will necessarily be able to afford. And so there's a lot of those situations when we're talking about disability justice, because I think that sometimes the assumption can be that we can all put in the effort to be healthy. And while I do think that there are often things that we can do to promote health, I also think that for a lot of us, there are a great deal of factors that may be out of our control. And so disability justice takes those things into consideration. So the next slide is from one of the past workshop series that I did where we talked about access needs. And so these post-it notes are some of the things that earlier participants had added when asked about their access needs. To give an example of some of the ways in which access might look different from one person to the next. For instance, you can see from the top left, there's a yellow sticky that says chronic fatigue, and needing to rest periodically throughout the day. I didn't put that on there, but reading that, I think, you know what, there are days where that's where I'm at in terms of my own functioning. The next one over says collective slash communal note taking. So I've been a part of different projects where, as we get into our Zoom meeting, someone says, here's the link to the doc where I'm taking notes. Folks can feel free to add in anything that I miss. And the first time that I saw that in practice, I remember feeling so grateful that someone was doing that work. And we also had the opportunity to chime in if we wanted to add things. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you all. I am an auditory learner. So I was always the last person you ever wanted to get notes from if you missed class because I never wrote anything down. I just listened. But my friend Matt, he was the best note taker. I adore him for that. And that is where we think of that interdependence coming into play, where, there are certain things that might be easy for one disabled person, but somebody else might be like, oh my goodness, I have a friend that comes to mind who always says, I'm not the person to take notes. I'm sorry, but that is not something that I'm good at, right? So, really opening up space for recognizing that we may all have different strengths and challenges. The third yellow post-it note from the left says, stating my needs without having to justify or excuse my body mind. And then attached to that, somebody else wrote this with a bunch of exclamation marks. And so to me, that really highlights the ways in which we are not always believed when we share the things that we struggle with, and that can make it really hard to disclose the areas in which we may need support. But again, discussions like these can help to open up space. So the next yellow sticky note over says, sharing needs without people saying they are offended. And I remember this discussion, and I wasn't really sure what that meant, but the person who added it said that she had been told that the access need of one employee needing to have their meetings scheduled in the afternoon was where someone in a management role was like, oh my goodness. Like, I can't believe I have to accommodate this. This is offensive to me. If I have to get up early, everybody else should have to get up early. And so I don't know the specifics of that person's individual access needs. But when I think back to my past as a therapist, there were lots of times where people were on medication for the sake of their mental health, which meant that sometimes they were groggy in the morning after they had slept overnight. And so, if it's possible, having the option to schedule meetings in the afternoon, that to me does not sound remotely offensive. That sounds extremely proactive, in fact. It means you're taking your needs into consideration and trying to align your day in a way that makes sense. But again, when we are in a society where there can be judgment around access needs, you can end up with people making those kinds of statements. And, the post-it note below, the yellow post-it note says brain fog and getting explanations at a slower pace. Again, that kind of connects to what I was saying about someone asking for meetings in the afternoon. If you know that, your mornings tend to be where you might have more brain fog, then that may be where if the meeting is scheduled in the afternoon, you might be able to keep up with the explanation at a faster pace than if the meeting is in the morning. The purple post-it note to the right says assistance with personal care, daily living needs, laundry, cooking, cleaning. This was from a participant with cerebral palsy. She is a wheelchair user, and if she does not have the support of a personal support worker, these are unmet access needs that she would be facing. And so I remember the first time she came to one of my workshops, she said to me, Crystal, you need to have at least a 15-minute break in the middle because that's how long it takes me to wheel myself to use the bathroom and come back. And until she told me that, I didn't know. But once I was made aware of that, I could then adjust accordingly. So, this is why I think it is really crucial to open up space to have these discussions because until then, I thought I was being as accommodating, but I didn't know what I didn't know until she told me. And so it really highlights why we want to normalize these kinds of discussions. Below is a green post-it note that says frequent rest and slow walking pace. And again, that could be for a variety of reasons. But I read that and I think, yeah, I could use a slow walking pace sometimes. And I think about something that I only heard a few years ago for the first time, where someone said, if you're ever walking with a group, when you when the last person reaches the group, it is helpful to pause so that they get a moment to rest the way the other group members had that time while they were waiting for them to arrive. And so it's something that I think about in how I engage with folks, where I always want to ensure that there are breaks, that there is enough time for somebody to say, actually, I need a moment. Can we sit down? Can we pause? Those are the ways in which we can prioritize access. Someone else on the purple post-it says reading material in alternative formats. So I tend to use slides, but maybe that isn't accessible to someone. Maybe for someone else, it might be more helpful to have a Google Doc with bullet points as a handout, and that would help them to engage more with the material. So, really understanding that, like, there isn't ever going to be a one size fits all approach, but it's really about meeting people where they're at. The yellow post-it note on the bottom in the middle says accessible spaces for wheelchairs or walkers, accessible washrooms, access to ramps or lifts, accommodation for fatigue with breaks. Again, along the lines of like, how do we ensure that the physical space meets the needs of wheelchair users? Someone else wrote on a yellow post-it, easy access to elevators to avoid stairs, for example, not having to ask for a key. I don't know about you, but I've definitely had times where I'm out and I need to use the washroom, and I realize it is the most convoluted process to get a key to access a public washroom. And so I can imagine that is even more challenging if you are a wheelchair user. The final post-it note on the left in orange says, need for frequent breaks, places to sit, paced conversations, slower walks, quieter gatherings. I ask people to not approach me from behind. So a lot of us have trauma histories. There are things that might not be startling for somebody else, but because of whatever past you've experienced, you might be easily startled. So you may need to say to someone, I don't think you realized how challenging that might have been when you approached me from behind, but please refrain from doing that because that is not good for my nervous system, right? So, just some examples of what access needs can look like. It's possible none of these apply to you, but it's also possible that these reflections get you to think about some of the ways in which this may apply to your own needs or maybe the needs of your loved ones. And so the final few slides are a poem that I adore called Disability Liberated. And so I usually end with this. And if folks are open to it, we can have folks chime in to read like a stanza at a time, or I can read the whole thing. But I just thought it might be a way for others to engage if that's of interest. And again,
Yeah, I
no
could definitely
pressure.
join in and read. That's not a
Okay,
problem. We've been
awesome.
streaming this on YouTube, and we have like two people watching on YouTube. So hi, YouTube. Thank you. Oh my gosh, we really wanted to make this accessible. Emiliano, do you want to also read a
Yeah, of
stanza or
course.
so? Okay,
Yeah.
fabulous. Take it away.
Okay. Come, you. Yes, you. Tonight we are gathering stories, ours, yours, each of us with our bundles of sticks, each of us with our strands of cord. The word in your pocket is what we need, the song in your heart, the callus on your heel.
Come out of the forest, the woodwork, the shadows to this place of freedom. Quilombo, Swamp Town, Winter Camp, Jacayeque, where those not meant to survive laugh and weep together. Share breath from mouth to mouth, pass cups of water, break bread, and let our bodies speak.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. Our history is in our bodies, what we do to breathe, how we move, the sounds we make, our myriad of shapes, our wild gestures, far outside the boundaries of what's expected. The knowledge bound to our bones, our trembling muscles, our laboring lungs, like secret seeds tied to the hair of our stolen ancestors. We carry it everywhere.
Come, beloveds, from your narrow places, from your iron beds, from your lonely perches. Come warm and sweaty from the arms of lovers, we who invent a world each morning and speak in fiery tongues.
Come you with voices like seagulls, dissonant and lovely, with hands like roots and twigs.
Come limbs that wander and limbs like buds and limbs heavy as stone. Come breathless and swollen and weary, fevered and racked with pain.
Come slow and heavy, come weary and scarred, come sweet and harsh and strong, come arched with pleasure, come slick with honey, come breathless with delight.
We say with our feet, with our backs and hands, no life belongs to another. Our bodies are not acreage livestock, overhead disposable tools.
We hum as we treble songs heavy with maps that lead us back to ourselves, singing you, yes, you are irreplaceable.
Here we are, and here we are fruitful. Our stories flower, take wing, reproduce like wind-blown seeds.
No surgeon's knife can cut the lines of spirit. Our family tree remains.
By Patricia Burney, David LaGrosse, and Aurora Levin Morales. From Skin, Tooth, and Bone, the basis of movement is our people. A disability justice primer, pages 55 to 57. Oh my God, this is so beautiful. I have Aurora Levens Morales's
Oh,
Medicina, Curamera
yes.
Medicina. Yeah, her first edition. I actually have it
Oh,
right
I'm
here.
so glad.
I'm never very far from it. Medicine Stories, the history, culture of politics of integrity.
Yes.
And so I utilize this as well, talking about place and who we are, because we are
I'm
so
so glad.
of so many. Anyways, oh my gosh, what a meeting of the minds.
Yes.
Loving this. I've been nodding at every moment, even if you saw me off camera.
I'm so glad it resonates. Any
Absolutely.
other thoughts or questions? I hope this made sense.
Oh, absolutely. It does. Absolutely. We've had two people watching on YouTube. I just wanted to
Awesome.
let you know that, Crystal,
Yeah.
that we have been live streaming your talk on YouTube, and because that's how much we believe that our channel needs to be aligned, and our platform would be nothing if it wasn't for disability justice. Like for the last 4 years, I have built this halfway on my bed, halfway off of my bed. um, and, through very traumatic episodes and so forth, and sometimes like in corners in Mexico when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
So this movement was completely built in the fundamentals of disability justice. So
Absolutely.
that's why I invited you. That's why we were very
I'm so glad.
intentional and spent so many resources to invite you to be here. Emiliana and I have been preparing for a while, and just really happy to see how this is gonna. We're ending Cafecito for this month, but we're gonna start up again in January after winter break. Give ourselves like a
Okay.
good time right now. It's the busiest time of the year right here, right now, until Christmas. It feels like a marathon sprint for a lot
Oh,
of us in our lives, right? And so, wanting to be respectful of that in leadership and coming back in January, and I hope you do join us for those talks as well.
yeah.
Emiliano, any reflections that you may have as well? Oh, should we get off
Yeah,
of the slide deck a little bit and so we can?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Okay.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I was like furiously writing the whole time because I also have trouble taking notes. Now I'm like completely dependent on these virtual note takers, which I have a lot of mixed feelings about, but it does liberate me from like having to write things because I can't like write and listen at the same time lots of times. So I was like writing quickly and then like back and forth, back and forth. It just uh, first of all, I like am always so grateful for disability justice activists because this is uh, uh, not that I don't see it as an independent like movement space or justice issue, but something that is so uh, like if you have any sense of not just empathy for other people, but empathy for like the situation that you could logically be in. Like it's even more than just empathy, just kind of like self-interest and common sense
Mm-hmm.
that I don't remember what the exact statistic is, but a third or a half of people will have some type of disability
Yep.
throughout the course of their lives.
Yep.
And how like we always say that like in poverty justice movements we're all one missed paycheck away from homelessness. Well, lots of time that missed
Absolutely.
paycheck away is from some
Mhm.
temporary or permanent disability that affects
Yeah.
us. So this is just like for me, uh, how society treats the people who maybe in that moment uh, can't provide some type of labor that is seen valuable. And so, whether it's a permanent or a temporary or a intense or maybe less intense
Hmm.
disability that like being kind of just marked as useless and like not worthy of even selling our labor to access the means of subsistence is
Yeah.
just such a root of not disability as something separate from the experience of everyday people, but like as
Yeah,
intimately part of the experience of everyday people and of poor people. Um,
absolutely.
and uh, I had like 4 or 5 points that I wanted to ask you about. If you don't mind, honestly, if we can go a couple minutes over, if that's okay
Yeah,
with
I think
everyone.
it's fine. Do we want this stream though? Because if you are going to reveal something that's a little bit more specific or
Oh no,
personal, we probably
no,
don't want
no.
it streamed on YouTube. Love you,
Right.
YouTube, for your bill, but you didn't register. We just kind of did this because this is how much we want to be liberated tonight. Um, shall I stop the
No,
stream?
whatever you want, but no, these weren't anything personal.
Okay, watch, and
Just
now more people are going to be like, "What is it?"
no,
Okay, cool, cool,
I
cool, cool.
I was just thinking, so like today is also Bi Visibility Day,
Yes.
and how uh, like disability really is something that does not exist in a binary. Like it's something that's so like just inherently non-binary for all the things that you talked about. Like even two people with the same diagnosis could have
Yep.
completely different needs.
Yeah.
And how this concept of this inclusive concept of disability allows us to break through some of those binaries. And I had never really thought about how it challenges masculinity and like
Yeah.
gender, like masculine gender roles. I assume like also feminine gender roles if there is like a
Absolutely.
a femme person who is maybe not able to do like caregiving or something like that that
Yeah.
is historically expected or something like that.
Absolutely.
And then also in I thought it was interesting that you're talking about like this political moment because you're in Canada, so maybe we have a little bit of different political moments, but there are I think things that are happening like parallel in both places. I was thinking about uh,
Yeah.
how like with all of the cuts that are happening in the US to basic like social security services, social security disability services,
Hmm.
how some of like those same cuts are also happening in Canada and really just
Yeah.
kind of across the
Yeah.
West, and how like uh, the alternatives that we are given to like public support is often things like made in Canada. Like
Hmm.
we're not going to give you a housing voucher for a person with a disability, but we will pay for medical aid and diet, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And just how um, explicit some of these policies are that we just like don't want you here.
Yeah.
And then my last thought, I guess, was just uh, how necessary this is now that after like 5 years of just like letting COVID rip and like first like the disability justice community kind of being at the forefront of being like, hey, if we just let this do like this herd immunity thing, like we're going to die.
Hmm.
And now like literally tens of millions of people have long COVID or other like
Yeah.
disabilities because of COVID,
Hmm.
and just how much better off we would be as a society if we, you know,
Yeah.
would have listened to the most vulnerable people who were
Yeah.
speaking not just out of their self-interest, but also out of like, hey, this happened to me. This can also happen to you. You should listen to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like, you know, I am realizing as you're talking, Emiliano, the one thing that is not explicitly stated in any of the 10 disability justice principles, but I really think it would be wrong of me to not highlight this while it continues to happen. Like disability justice is always going to be aligned with anti-genocide, right? Like that needs to be said as we witness Palestine, Congo, Sudan. Like we know that all of these same forces that negatively impact disabled folks on Turtle Island contribute to the disablement of folks in those countries. And again, a lot of that has to do with imperialism and settler colonialism and capitalism, right? So all of this stuff is interconnected.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this space for reflection, to give visibility and voice to people with disabilities. And yeah, I really, really appreciate your time. And yeah, do you have any last words, Araceli, before we finish up?
Yeah, no, I think I said, pretty much what I wanted to say, which is like why my intentionality to inviting you was because if it wasn't for disability justice and like Andreen Renee Brown and her work regarding liberation and all the people that you just mentioned.
Yeah,
There's also a book I read was called Justice Care, I believe, as well. And anyways, but regardless, just to say that we're like that Midwest Mujeres is definitely open. There's quite a few of the women that we serve that are, facing some sort of disability, both either emotional because of
yeah,
trauma and abuse that they faced, either in domestic relationships or as children,
yeah,
myself included. It's just like, and it scars you. And there are invisible disabilities of which we're dealing with and navigating with. And so that's
absolutely.
another reason why I wanted to really uplift this voice and this intersection and end the year with this, because a lot of times we're looking at perfectionism in the United States so heavily, and it's now and like you made a really important statement. Obviously, disability justice is about anti-genocide, like
Yes.
that is very important. And it almost
Yeah,
feels like we want to erase or shame those with autism right now because of like
yeah,
whatever vaccinations. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't, I don't know. I just I don't. I don't know if I believe all that too right now. What I do believe is that the diversity that autistic folks give us in our lives have helped me tremendously grow as a person and as a human. My children included, having neurotypical children,
yeah,
has really, like, as a parent, helped me deal with really tough situations and have like just more pause in life, like you were saying about this woman who was in a wheelchair, and she's like, I need a
yeah,
15-minute break at least
yes,
every so often. So
yeah,
in that, we're at 7:09. We need a breakout. We all need to do our things. But I just want to
yes.
say,
But
like,
I'm
happy
glad that
Disability
we were able
Justice
to do
Day.
this.
Apparently today is Disability Justice Day, or BIPOC
Um,
Disability Day.
by Visibility Day was
Oh,
what
by
Emiliano had said.
Visibility
Yeah.
Day. Oh,
And we
okay.
know that, bisexuals tend to get erased a lot of times
Oh,
if, you're in a
yeah.
hetero looking relationship, for instance, folks may not necessarily acknowledge that part of your identity. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Emiliano.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. I can't
All
wait for you
right.
to come back
Yes.
again. We
Yes.
are
Take
recording this, so
care.
we're definitely going to then upload it again permanently on YouTube and have
Awesome.
it part of our library, because this what you gave us was really amazing. You brought
I'm so
over some
glad.
curandera abuelas in our Latina literature.
Yes.
Get but para especially for those of us who think that disability justice doesn't include Latinos, that doesn't include
Mhm.
Black women, and center them, and it actually came from them.
Yes,
So
exactly. No, I'm so glad you've got Rorem Brooke because yeah, this came from women of color who understood that the personal is always political.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All
Buenas
right.
Thank you
noches.
so
Okay,
much.
take
Yes,
care.
buenas noches,
Bye.
YouTube. Thank
Okay.
you for supporting us, my
Yes.
YouTube people
All
that are
right.
watching right now. It's so funny.
Thank you
Bye.
so
Okay,
much.
cool. Thank you. Bye bye.
Ciao.